Welcome to Personal Injury Marketing Minute.
Welcome to the Personal Injury Marketing Minute, where we quickly cover the hot topics in the legal marketing world. I'm your host, Lindsey Busfield, the Vice President and Partner over at Optimize My Firm. Today, I'm joined by Brian LaCien, founding partner of Smith LaCien LLP in Chicago. Brian is a trial attorney with more than $3 billion in verdicts and settlements and deep experience handling complex personal injury and mass torts cases. Today, we're talking about how AI is being integrated into case management and analysis and personal injury practices and everything that we see AI doing and everybody talking about, because it really is the hot topic right now. And we want to give you an inside look at what AI actually looks like inside of a personal injury firm. So thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. It is an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me. Good to talk to you today.
So, give us a little bit of background on who you are and your firm, because you are in one of the most saturated PI markets in the United States. Would love to learn a little bit more about you and your practice.
Sure. We've been, the firm has been around for about 6 years now. We, both of us, myself and Todd Smith, my partner, practice at another firm, him for 30 years, me for 20 years. Well, a little bit less than 20. And, yes, it is a competitive market. It's the only market I've known. Born and raised in Chicago. Been practicing personal injury work, a lot of single event, a little bit of mass tort work, and a little bit more than a little bit. So, but mainly single event, and then uh, a- you know, 20% mass tort here or there.
That's great. You clearly have a lot of experience where you're at and competing in that Chicago market, and that in and of itself is a great accomplishment. But over the past nearly 20 years of practice, you have most certainly seen a lot of developments in how personal injury cases are handled. Everything from new technologies to new marketing initiatives, just different ways that law offices have to adjust in order to stay on top of the current trends. So, talk to us now about AI and what you have seen so far over the past few years.
Yeah, it's um, in some ways slowly, but in other ways quickly becoming an essential tool of practice. I think I might be dating myself, but I believe I was one of the last years to learn books in law school. So my first semester, my first year of law school, we had to only use books. And then second semester, we got our Westlaw passwords and Lexis passwords and went to computers. I think that may have even segued out while I was in law school for those 3 years. But that is the type of change that is coming to the practice of law. It's a tool like anything else. Westlaw was or Lexis were never going to write your brief. I don't know if anytime soon AI will ever get there. We all have heard those horror stories about people heavily relying on it. I think that's a bad idea for a variety of reasons, but it is an essential tool. It saves time when you're on the plaintiff side. It's mainly contingency fee. Time is critical. Um, and the things that certain programs can do, um, there's a lot of caveats as far as whether it's an open system, closed system, and what you could input into it. But assuming that you're abiding by, I sound like a lawyer now, you're abiding by confidentiality, your own ethic rules, whatever state you're in, it is a useful tool. And the progression, I remember 3, 4 years ago, what chat looked like, and chat and was one of the only games in town as far as or tools in town. And now there's quickly a number of alternatives. I feel like we're in the midst of the VHS, the first beta phase of the AI, and or I guess both of us are. I don't want to age you, but it's almost like when I was in college and, people would use Netscape or Yahoo or Excite. And then I was out of college and there was Google, and that was it. So we're a little bit in the every system is jockeying for position and market share. So it's going to shake out. But as far as a tool, it's becoming, um, I don't want to use the word essential yet, but it's becoming more and more useful to the practice.
And I agree wholeheartedly when we are looking at this as kind of a transition period. And similarly to you, I remember when the internet went from not being a thing to then having its hand in absolutely everything. And as a kid, I had to quickly learn to adjust to, from going from books to now researching using the internet and trying to figure out what information is solid information. And I had to take all of these, courses on what you can trust, what you can't trust. And then you have, email becoming something that is every day and replacing administrative assistants and secretaries. And everybody had to completely shift how they worked because the internet came in and changed absolutely everything. And I can't help but feel that AI is coming in and rapidly doing the same thing, and similarly, in personal injury law in particular, because you have all of these new different technologies that are impacted by AI. But you have everything from intake to marketing to case management software. And so, have there been any of these AI platforms or AI tools that you have found to be exceptionally helpful at this point? Or are we still kind of in the testing and figure it out phase?
We are a little bit in the testing. We have used some of them and, some good ones. Because I do feel the same way. We're in this transition period and then you commit to one and, so it's a little bit about using a few different tools. Ones that we have found helpful have been Eve, Supio, and then also, think a newer company, at least newer as far as our radar, is a company called Preamble. Um, and they all have positives and negatives, but they all, I think, have put together some pretty good packages that would be helpful for lawyers. And they all kind of follow the closed system, as far as the practice of law, they set it up in a way that there's some security for the lawyers, for the clients, for the information. Um, so yeah, no, those are all helpful programs we found.
And so are these all case management softwares, or for those listening who might not be familiar with them, what do these integrations do?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. They would all integrate, so they would help you with they would all integrate with your depending on your case management software. They would all integrate. Oftentimes, um, case management software, most of the big ones that PI firms use, would already have some degree of integrated AI light, I would say. And these are secondary programs that would help with research, not really legal research. Uh, I would call it not. I would call it information management, meaning it helps you, whether it be a medical malpractice, a product liability, um, some other complex case, maybe a construction where there's heavy documents. It helps you consolidate information in an efficient manner, just because of the volume. Meaning, Adobe is great. If you want to find every blood pressure and 10,000 pages of records, you could do certain searches. There are AI systems that can consolidate that information in mere seconds. So they are, I don't want to call them document management. They're more like information management. Again, it's an adjunct tool to helping your overall practice.
And I think that that's an important distinction where, there are certain tools that you can use that are just kind of search and find and consolidate, where, if you want to find every single blood pressure record. But what AI has been developing to do, and really kind of the purpose of it, is to figure out the intent and to figure out how this information can be most helpful based on why you're looking for it. And I think that that's one of the most interesting things that it's able to do. And I mean, for example, not in case management, but in my email, I can type in when was my last correspondence with Gary, and it'll spit out what my last correspondence with Gary was. But I can type in where did I leave things with Gary, and it'll provide a summary of my entire relationship with Gary, and if there are any follow up items that I need to be taking action on. And for me, that is much more useful. And I think that that's the heart at where AI is going to really be practical, to be implemented across the board and save time, especially when it comes to research management. Have you seen
Yeah.
similar?
Yes, I've seen similar. I'm a little bit, I guess, try cases and my name goes on a document, so I have to make sure. I mean, so in with emails, your own internal systems, it's helpful. And but when it comes to stuff that is going outside of the office, um, I would still say I'm not a naysayer. I think it's incredibly helpful, but there's a little bit of caution. I kind of, if you let me a little bit talk, not that you're not, but that all said, I kind of give this example to people. It is in some degrees predictive by nature, and it is way better than you or I. Uh, if you had a deck of cards predicting what the next card is, and you or I might be writing down the numbers, spade, heart, and trying to make predictions about what's the cards left. It is way better at it. It's way faster at it. But in the same way, there's still guesswork in it. And sometimes you find if it has to take it's it's pretty good guesses, but if it has to make 100 choices to get to the answer, even if it's 99.9, it can steer a different way. So the prediction side of it is you gotta be cautious. But on the other side of it, when it is given a universe of information, and this is similar to what you were talking about with the email, and you ask it to consolidate information, you ask it to organize information that you're giving it, it's incredibly efficient. Does it miss some things sometimes? Sometimes. No system is perfect, but it is a huge uh, improvement to trying to, if we just go to blood pressures. Um, but it's a huge improvement, even consolidating complicated information in a readable fashion. Still doesn't get away. You got to kind of know the records, but at the same time, it helps you organize them because sometimes in learning a file, you're going through every single record, you're organizing in certain ways. It saves time and makes it more understandable. And it is very good when, again, going back to the card example, if you threw 52 cards on the ground and you told it to organize it, it would organize it in 5 seconds. You or I would sit there and organize it by color, then by number. It does it in mere seconds. It has an amazing ability when it's given a universe of information and told to work only within that universe to consolidate. When it gets into the predictive side, it's still, you know, and that's where you see all the bad press on AI when people ask it, because what I found, or not that I've personally experienced, because it's just not the way I read a brief, but when you hear about these stories with citations and stuff like that, you can feel that that's the predictive nature of AI, believing that a case should say something and it just
And it just doesn't.
materializes. It just doesn't. It doesn't say it, and then it materializes a case that isn't there.
And Cornell
So,
actually just did, well, not just did, but Cornell a while ago did a study on this because it's called hallucination, and that's it. That's the term that they're using for it, and it is a real problem. And AI, is self-aware to some extent of knowing that it hallucinates. And let's say it's you're trying to do some research and it spits out a case that never existed, where, it just completely hallucinated it out of thin air. And you can go back to the LLM and say, "Hey, where did you get this information from?" And it'll just be like, "Oops, I made that up." So yes, making sure that you are not using and relying exclusively on that predictive nature, because it still hallucinates and it's going to continue to do so, and it'll get more reliable over time, but we're not there yet.
No, 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 no. I think it takes time. And when you're really thinking of it, you're asking it to, the body of case law is built up over 100+ years, depending on the jurisdiction, even more than that. And it's just the volume of, especially in the past 30 years, the volume of case law has just exploded. You're asking it really to consolidate a tremendous amount of information in a small period of time, which I still think the classic tools, and now when I say classic, is really the Lexis, Thomson Reuters, Westlaw type searches are still great. I guess I'm a dinosaur in the sense of, even when I use Westlaw, I use the old fashioned way to like search within so many words. I can't even get into the integration from Google, which happened probably 15 years ago now. But that all said, there's still a place for classic research. And again, AI is a great tool. But it's a tool among others that lawyers will use, and cons- its ability to consolidate information and organize it isn't fantastic. And even if you're scared of the predictive nature, it is an absolute reason to use it, because even if you're going to say, I'm going to look at every single record, that's great. And you should as a lawyer. But at the same time, the way it can organize the information for you to look at is immensely time saving.
It is, and when it comes to law, saving time is saving money, and it creates time that you can either, focus on other aspects of that case, or that you can have that you're focusing on other cases, or you can, take a day off every once in a while. Yeah, in theory. But no, AI definitely has some uses that are just built in, and that are inherently going to save you time and money. And further than that, if you do not get at least comfortable using AI now, do you think that law firms are going to be falling behind in terms of being able to be sustainable long term as AI continues to develop?
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to consolidate information, organize information, it's essential. You know, the way in which it can gather information that you need in a quick amount of time for, human review. It's To not have it is it's like just saying, "Oh, we have a law library."
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You
like
know,
we don't
it's
use the internet. We'll just go look at the
yeah,
encyclopedia
it
here.
is. Yeah, no, it is just it's dangerous. I mean, I started practicing at a period of time where, in at least the initial few years, lawyers on the plaintiff side, you didn't want to be in court with a laptop, because then you look like you're like a wealthy lawyer. You got a laptop, you're doing all these things. And you know 2007, 2010, that kind of all changed, because it's essential that the audiovisual, it's what juries expect. And now with I think one of the first cases I worked on, it still had box review, meaning there was thousands and thousands of boxes, and you had to do the hand reviews. And that's all been gone for going on 20 years now. That all said, it's the volume of information that lawyers now have to review, and some of the productions in cases, even in medical records. If we just say uh, an auto case, what used to be a few notes, now the way that all the medical providers are all on Epic or some other similar program, that what used to be 100 pages is suddenly 500 pages, or what used to be and then if you have audit records, that could be thousands and more pages that are prior versions of the original pages that you have, not the original, the final. the final pages you have. So just the influx of information that is given now in litigation oftentimes is redundant because you want every email, but then you get every email chain. And so what one email is like turns, if there's 10 people on it, you get 10 emails. And then if there's responses, you get the responses. And then the replies, you get the replies. And suddenly, even though in one email you could pretty much see everything, you have another 200 pages of redundancy. And it's just essential to be able to absorb that information in an efficient way. Again, I think it has to have attorney's eyes on documents, but it is a tool that is, essential. It's kind of like, if you're farming, you're not going to use a rake, you're going to use a tractor. I mean, it's just, it's just the reality.
Yeah, and it's just the right tool that you have to have the job now.
Yeah.
And especially if you are looking for an email, going back to that example, and where you just needed an email where somebody said yes to to answer a question, and that one yes is all that you need. You can use AI to sift through the content and find the exact context that you're looking for that, and it's just a huge time saver, especially when you're trying to find those minute details. And so we've talked a lot about how AI can help on the back end in terms of operations, but AI is also helpful, I would assume, in your practice with continuing communications with clients. Have you been able to use the software to be able to stay in better communication?
A little bit, meaning it's really good with prompts. We've got to dip our toe in the water on client communications. It makes me a little nervous because it's, what is it going to say? Things like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But on prompts, it is essential, and on helping with attorneys with workflows. So it is, yes. Now, as far as an AI system, I mean, everyone has what would be a rudimentary AI system tied to your web page. When someone contacts you, there's automatic prompts. But as far as actual client communications, I know there's some stuff out there about, and I would just be honest, it makes me a little bit nervous as to like what it says, how it works, and things like that. I'd rather have a couple years of it being out there before I decided to use it. Um, but I can imagine, so 80% of our practice is single event. So we don't have that many cases where there's 1,000 clients. And I think that's where it becomes more essential, because for us, there's a little bit more of, you meet face to face. It's a single event case. It's a single client. You actually know the family. Nothing against mass tour work. It's just a different animal. And, if you have to give an update and then you have to give it 1,000 times, it's very difficult. So I think that's where AI can be helpful. But the single event, I think there's a little bit of a client expectation, and deservingly so, of, actual contact with the lawyers. And that's just the nature of single event.
Right, and especially as you mentioned, it's a little scary to anticipate what the AI might say to them. As we talked about before, the AI's propensity to hallucinate. You don't want it to give a bad update to a client and not have eyes on that. And so there, of course, are limitations, especially when it comes to those attorney-client relationships. And this was something that I saw a few years ago where the AI intake had first come out, and it was an absolute dumpster fire. And people would call, they would realize it was a robot. It was very obviously a robot trying to pretend to be a human. They would hang up immediately. Or if they couldn't get the information they needed right away, they would hang up within 10 seconds. And there were law firms that were just losing tens of thousands of dollars just because they implemented this AI software before it was really ready, because they were just so excited to get going with it. And clearly that's developed over the past few years and has gotten a lot better. But there's obviously some hesitancy to incorporate AI into some of the most important parts of your practice management, namely having your relationships with clients and prospective clients and those types of communications. Unfortunately, we experienced some technical difficulties, which is a little ironic given the topic of our conversation today. But I want to thank Brian for coming on the show, talking about his experience with AI and how he incorporates AI software and technology in his practice. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Personal Injury Marketing Minute. I hope that you got some great information, especially when it comes to AI, and that yes, it is a little scary. It does have its pitfalls, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if you are not being flexible with it, if you are not learning how to incorporate it into your business, you will get left behind. So if you want to have any conversations about AI or operations, or if you're interested in incorporating more SEO in your marketing plan, feel free to reach out to me at lindsey@optimizemyfirm.com. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast and don't miss our next exciting episode. I hope you all have a great day. And Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.